Welcome to the Lady Up America podcast. I'm Diane Canada. Thanks so much for tuning in. This is where we start a kettle, not a fight, helping Christian conservative moms win hearts and minds to Jesus, especially in the suburbs. You know, this is Holy Week, and I think this symbolism from Palm Sunday to Easter Sunday holds a very special significance, especially in our modern society, because we know that we're in the last days. We know that we're in the last hours of the last days as we see so much prophecy unfolding all around us. Now, we don't know if that's today. Jesus is coming today. We don't know if he's coming 10 years from now, 100 years from now. We don't know. I don't think our country can sustain that long, but I'm not Jesus Jr., so I wouldn't pretend to call it. We're certainly not setting times, dates, timelines, anything like that here. But we are to be ready at all times. And part of being ready is being informed. You know, as a kid, as a preacher's kid even, I didn't know those mile markers between Palm Sunday and Easter. I didn't know what Jesus was doing, nor had I really ever stopped to think about it. But what he taught us in that dash in between those two time periods holds a lot of symbolism and significance for what we're facing right now in these last days. So let's look at it in a neat way today. I've got some visuals I want to walk you through, and let's just break it down and see what was Jesus doing during that 7-day period. What was he teaching us? This was his last week on earth. So probably what he was leaving us with in his last days is probably something that held a lot of importance to him that we need to revisit at this stage. Before we dive into our news headlines with Steve Gill, I want to ask you if you would you mind subscribing or liking? It helps to get the podcast out to more people. Just the way these algorithms work, it just is like if you like it or you share it or you subscribe, then it tells other people, hey, this is something you might want to check out. So I would sure appreciate that. And also on the other side of the news headlines, when we go into our Tea Time Cafe, we'll be comparing what we're learning about Holy Week to what's happening in the news. So it's all combined. It's all connected. I will see you back here in just a minute.
Taking back this house, taking back this town. Mama, don't back down. Just lay it up, lay it up, lay it up. Sidewalks are for bicycles, not for angry moms. Our children will know peace again, 'cause we're on the job. Yeah, lady. We're fired up and we're ready, so give us a little room. Get up. Our faith don't move that mountain now, just watch it move. Taking back this house, taking back this town. Mama, don't back down. No. Just lay it up, lay it up, lay it up.
All right, ladies, we're going to sit down with our good friend, Steve Gill. He is the founding publisher and editor at TristarDaily.com. We can trust him. Steve has served in the White House. He had a long run on syndicated radio, and he does a lot of international television commentary. So he really has his finger on the pulse of what's going on, the temperature around the world. He's an incredible asset to this show. Please welcome Steve Gill. Hi, Steve. Good morning.
Thank you. Good. Thank you, and happy Easter week or pre-Easter week.
Holy Week, yes. Happy Easter to you too, my friend. All right. So speaking of Easter, the King of Kings, I was driving through my little country town here over the weekend, and I saw a No Kings protest going on, and apparently they sprung those up just so randomly all over the country. What can you tell us about that?
Well, with the pre-printed signs that are paid for by somebody,
Exactly.
which is a good advantage for them, because when they write their own signs, they misspell words while they're calling Trump stupid. They have no explanation when they are interviewed out on the streets. All these No Kings events around the country, just the grassroots that are mainly composed of women liberals over 60 who are still looking for something to protest, and then they just shift from protest to protest.
Yeah.
What's the agenda today, guys?
Yeah.
So anyway, they're doing their No Kings protest, and again, that when they're asked by the media, so what are the rights you've been denied? They can't name anything.
No,
They
of
can't
course not.
identify anything that they're at a loss of. My favorite, though, is the No Kings rallies in Canada and England, where they actually have a king. In England, they're arresting people for flying the British flag. While you can fly the Palestinian flag, you can fly gay flags, you can fly whatever you want. But if you fly a British flag, they arrest you
I mean,
because it might offend somebody.
it's like,
And yet they can have a No Kings protest, which is literally treason in
yes.
England. So it makes no sense.
I mean, it's just like, it's clown world. I mean, it is just an upside. It's like, remember that old show, The Twilight Zone? It's like, that's what so many of us feel like we're living in right now. It's like, how can they be so blind and so misled? These are grown people. And it's like, how can you be so indoctrinated to they're pushing the very agendas that they say they're against. I've never seen such a lost culture. I mean, that's what I have to keep coming back to, Steve, because yeah, we can laugh about it, but it's really sad. It's just so sad that these people are that bought in to something that is so deceptive.
Liberalism truly is a mental disorder, and we
Yeah.
saw it on display again in various locations around the country. And Trump derangement syndrome is real. These
Yeah.
people are crazy in their, unapologetic hatred of Donald Trump.
Yeah.
I swear, if Trump cured cancer
Yeah.
tomorrow, they'd stage protest in favor of cancer. The Democrats are actually threatening to sue to stop the payments of TSA agents that Trump has been able to push through. The Democrats not only don't want them paid, they want to sue to take the money back.
Are you kidding me? I hadn't heard that yet. My gosh. It's like positioning wise for the midterms. I mean, obviously you would think that this would just sink them for that. I don't know how they think this would be helpful to help them get reelected, but
they should be showing the photos. They should be showing the videos of the long lines at these airports, 4 or 5 hour delays because of the Democrats shutting down the inspection process at airports, putting us all at risk as we've got, the Iran conflict continuing. We know that there are terrorists in our country. So let's continue to defang the Department of Homeland Security and put families at risk here because the Democrats are so adamantly in favor of anything and everything they can do to promote illegal immigrants, including their judges who are taking folks who've been convicted, who've been charged multiple times, who commit heinous crimes, and then they're releasing them either with no jail time or with limited jail time because the judges that we have allowed as Republicans, particularly federal judges that we've just let get through the process without blocking every single one of them, has put these judges in place who are letting vile, violent criminals out to do more harm, and they are doing harm again. And this is the Democrat Party's agenda: protect illegals at all costs at the expense of honest, decent, innocent American citizens and children and taxpayers. I mean, these guys have been stealing tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. And then again, judges don't even slap them on the wrist. They just say, "Ooh, you should not have done that. Now go do it again."
Exactly. Well, God told us in the last days that hearts would be hardened, that eyes would be blind, that right would be wrong, wrong would be right. I mean, the lawlessness, we're seeing it play out, right, prophecy just playing out right in front of our eyes right now. Every single Christian I talk to just says, absolutely, we're in the season. Not only are we in the season, we're in the last hour. Some say last minutes of the season. So it shouldn't surprise us, but it just, I think we just have whiplash from all of the snapping our necks around and going, what? It's like an epidemic of that. It seems like in our culture. Speaking of airports.
Well, and by the way, on that, the fact that we have Christians complaining about this, and you and I have talked about this before, and yet we stay home on election day. We've just seen a couple of special elections in Florida and around the country. One was Mar-a-Lago, a state house race flipped to Democrat by 800 votes. It looked like it was because it was stolen with technology. But the bottom line is, in that race that is being trumpeted by the Democrats all over the country, 30% voter turnout. As we've talked before, I get really sick and tired. My mom used to always say, I am sick and tired. It's like, well, then stop spanking me. That's just wearing you out. But I am tired of hearing Christians who are sick and tired of what's happening when they sit at home on election day. Our absence is what elects these absolute crazy Democrats, the policies they impose. And if we keep staying home, it is our absence that is doing the work of Satan. And Christians need, as we've talked before, to step up, step out of the pews, and get to the polls. And if you
Yep.
don't, then shut up.
Yeah. Darkness doesn't increase. It's just the light dims. We bring in that light, we drive that dark out. That's how it works. And yeah, when we just sit home, we're just on these dimmers, right? Like the evil is just taking over. And you're right. I mean, it's on our watch. This is our watch. So could they still cheat? Could they still do all the things? Yeah, they probably will. But at least we can face our Creator one day and said we did everything we could. And if we would
As
turn
I
out,
pointed out here before,
pardon,
17 million Christian evangelicals, not just general Christians, not just Easter Christmas Christians, Christian evangelicals stay home in presidential election years to the tune of 17 million of us. That swings every election, state house, state senate, Congress, Senate, the presidency. So again, it's on us.
yeah.
And again, it's right to complain. It's your right to complain. But don't voice your complaints if you've not gotten out and voiced your vote at the polls, because you're literally doing the work of Satan, and I don't have any tolerance for it.
Yeah, me either. I'm over it. At this point, I'm just coming out boldly too. It's like, get up off your death, get up off your blessed assurance and go vote. It's just our kids, your kids too, your grandkids. And these Democrats, they're the demonic, they should just be called the demonic party at this point. They're coming for them. They're coming for our kids. And sitting home, sitting the bench, riding the fence is just not an option anymore. You got to get off your blessed assurance and go vote. Speaking of airports, it was getting back to me over the weekend that Marsha Blackburn was caught in the airport. Okay, now I want to preface this by saying I like Marsha. Marsha has my vote. I know a lot of the viewers who watch me do not agree, and that's okay. But we want to be fair. We want to call things out as we see them because we need to make people aware of what's going on. So what did she do this time that's got everybody's tail feathers all ruffled?
Well, she is, as in soccer parlance, she's doing some own goals. She's self-inflicted wounding herself into taking a race that she's leading dramatically in the polls, and is doing the kinds of things that open the door to an upset. You had a few weeks ago during the ice storm, the power outage, her office, her folks were trying to get special treatment from NES to expedite her getting her personal power on, her neighborhood getting moved up the list so she could get power when hundreds of thousands of Nashvillians were literally sitting in the dark and the cold.
Is that true? Was that when she was actually trying to do that, or was she just calling on behalf of her constituents? Because that's what I never could understand. Was it really her trying to get it special treatment, or because I know you report on these things, so you would know best. So you think that's really what she was doing?
I think her staff was trying to take care of her. I don't think she was making the calls, but the fact that they thought it was appropriate to try and pressure and push NES to give special treatment to the senator and her neighborhood to make sure they got moved up the list. Again, it's a bad look at best. And then she missed this key vote on the SAVE Act to get home. When they were having the vote. Now, granted, it was an overwhelming vote. Why is she leaving early to dodge a vote and then using an escort to go through the airport without having to wait in lines that are, again, the fault of the Democrats, but every Republican should have been standing in line with the real people, pointing out that, hey, we're standing here because the Democrats love illegals more than they love you. Republicans ought to be running the videos of the Democrats voting against reopening TSA authority in the airports and showing these long lines until people's eyes are bleeding. But for Marsha and others to have been using, now most of the others are the Democrats who've been, skirting the lines to get home and get to the airport process quicker. That is a horrible look. It does not, again, fit an agenda of somebody saying, I'm a fighter for the people, when she's basically cutting in line, avoiding the lines. And again, the fact that she had this escort who was trying to block the cameras to keep people from being able to see what she is doing doesn't help either. So again, these are self-inflicted wounds that she and her team should know better. And she ought to be speaking out and saying that was a mistake. I'm never going to do that again. And we should follow the lead of Delta and others who are saying no more special treatment for Congress members with VIP treatment, particularly when our airports are less secure than they should be.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to just give her the benefit of the doubt on this one for a minute because I feel like I know her heart. I've had many encounters with her. She's been on my show several times. I talk to her quite a bit, especially when I see her and stuff. So I just feel like there must have been a reason. Like let's just give her the benefit of the doubt. Say there must have been something she was trying to get to. Maybe there was something with family or who knows. If she was really,
I understand that, but everybody at that airport was trying to get the family, get the spring break, get
I
home.
understand.
Everybody
Okay, now
standing in
Steve,
line for 4 hours had the same story.
if she was really a prima donna, she would have chartered a plane. Can we just give her that?
Well, that would cost money.
I don't know. I'm gonna still. I want to. I'll ask her about it when I see her next because I'm curious.
Perhaps the only thing worse than cutting a line would have been, a picture of her, like we see with so many of the Democrats boarding their private plane to avoid the chaos at the airports that their votes have created. So, yeah, I guess she could have doubled down and gotten a private plane, and then if we had a photo of that, that might have actually slightly been worse. In either event, you've got to make good decisions. And again, these are self-inflicted wounds. These aren't things that her opponents are putting upon her. These are the decisions that she, her staff, her team are making that they can avoid.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from on it. Again, I'm a loyal person to a fault, maybe. So I just want to try to give her the benefit of the doubt on it. But we'll be curious to hear the outcome of that. And I definitely want her not missing key votes. So I'll say that 100%. So let's talk about what's going on in Iran, because I heard Donald Trump make a pretty big threat. Said if the strait's not open by this time and this time, we're just going to obliterate you. We're done playing. We're just going to drop the bombs and obliterate the rest. So what do you think is the likelihood of that happening, and kind of where do we stand on that?
Well, we're seeing that done. Again, they had these, bunker buster bombs dropped early Tuesday morning that, hit one of the main missile storage sites that, created explosions and secondary explosions. What we're seeing is that in the early days of this conflict, you had, hundreds of missiles being fired. Now it's down to one here, one there. That still causes damage. It still causes concern and lack of stability in the oil markets and in the global arenas. But they have been defanged to the point that they really can't do anything coordinated or aggressive. That doesn't mean they can't still get by with, attacking a tanker here or launching a missile, into the holy city of Jerusalem or into the, civilian targets in the UAE. And you're seeing other countries in the Middle East step up more aggressively and saying they're going to start using their military to go after the remaining targets in Iran as well. The problem is it just kind of creates that lingering conflict while the Straits of Hormuz, where we are seeing more and more shipment of oil coming through, it just creates that chaos that lets the market movers, that lets the folks that are trying to manipulate the market create the fear that drives the oil prices up. There is plenty of oil supply available. What we're seeing is that fear that it might be diminished, and again, those that trade in the futures are dominating this with the fear they help create with the Democrats and the media, adding fuel, no pun intended, to the fire. What you do have is President Trump making it clear that the oil that flows through the Straits of Hormuz don't really come to us. Most of it goes to China. Most of it goes to India. Most of it goes to Europe. Liquefied natural gas that we supply is mainly provided to Europe. If they don't want to play with us, and we've seen just in the last 24 hours or so, Italy, France, others, Spain, deny U.S. access to our own military bases in their country, deny overflight of our aircraft to go continue to open the Straits of Hormuz and eradicate the threat that Iran poses to Europe and to the Middle East, they're denying us the ability to help them defend themselves. And I think that it is pushing us closer and closer to the point, and I encourage it, for President Trump to say, we're going to zero out our payments to NATO. We're paying over half anyway. We're going to zero that out today. You guys are not dependable allies, so we're not going to be the dependable banker anymore. Same thing with Ukraine. The only reason we're funding and doing what we've been doing in Ukraine is because Europe is terrified of Russia. Fine. If you won't pony up and support the efforts to make the region and the world safer. We're not going to keep being the banker for your follies to protect you when you won't pony up and pay for yourselves. And then finally, should we even have NATO any longer? If these allies, Italy, France, Germany, the United Kingdom, are not dependable allies, what are we doing in NATO that was supposed to stop the Russian aggression, or actually it was the Soviet aggression that doesn't exist anymore? If they don't want to be a dependable ally, why should they be able to count on us to be there for them?
Yeah, I completely agree. Do you think that the reason is because they're just scared of retaliation from Iran like they're doing to the other Middle Eastern countries? Do you think maybe
No, I think they're terrified of what they've allowed in their own countries. I think they've allowed Islamists to dominate their countries by the free flow of immigration into their countries that has brought crime to an epic level in places like Italy, where about 6% of their population is Muslim, and yet about 50% of the violent rapes, murders, and crimes are being conducted by these Islamist radicals. The same thing in France, the same thing in the United Kingdom. These leaders, these weak-kneed, spineless leaders like Macron in France, like Starmer in the United Kingdom, they're afraid of what they've allowed to happen to their own cultures and countries. And it ought to be a big warning for us. Do not allow this to continue. That's why guys like Andy Ogles and others are saying, stop the inflow completely and let's start deporting those who just, even show us their hand of being anti-American with what they say, what they do. I mean, the number of these, Muslim extremists parading in the streets at these No Kings rallies ought to concern all
of us. And the number of mosques, they all need to be torn down, every single one of them, and get them all out. Get them out of our country, 100%. I mean, they have absolutely demonstrated what they're trying to do. They're not hiding it. So it's not tolerant to allow a religion in here that is in direct contradiction to our way of life. And not only our way of life,
civilization. I mean, it's a contradiction to civilization when they are saying, "Oh, women are our sex toys, and they are for us to use and abuse and discard." I mean, they don't make any bones about their view of humanity, of culture. You look where Christianity is in the minority, there are no rights. Once they get to a certain percentage in whatever country or culture they emerge in, it is a different level. There is no tolerance from Islam. That doesn't mean every Muslim is a violent terrorist, but when you look at the culture that it brings to bear, they are not assimilating. They are not here to become a valuable asset in civilization. It is the barbarism of 500 years ago, and why those in this country want to embrace it or celebrate it, or even celebrate what's going on in Iran, where they kill tens of thousands of people, women, for simply showing a wisp of hair under their burqa. It is not a faith. It is not a culture that fits with modern civilization. And Europe is showing us what has happened when they've ignored that threat. We are ignoring it at our own peril as well.
Yeah. It's just a vast ignorance in our country as far as what they're ushering in. What cracks me up the most is the LGBTQ community rallying for them. They'd be thrown off buildings in their countries if they were over there. So I just, it's the ignorance. God says, "My people perish for lack of knowledge," and that's so true. We're just seeing it. So we got to start using our voices, like you always say. We got to speak it louder than they can deny it, and so we're out here trying to do. I appreciate you so much. You just bring such a wealth of wisdom to the show. Ladies, please go to tristardaily.com. Get your news there from Steve Gill. We can trust Steve Gill. Steve, I'll see you next week. Thank you so much, my friend.
See you next week. Thank you.
It's tea time. Welcome back to my Tea Time Cafe. We're going to take a look at these headlines in context from a biblical perspective. We're also going to walk through the mile markers of Holy Week, hopefully learn something new, maybe fill in some blanks. But this is the most significant week in our Christian heritage. And I think it's so super important for us to understand what was going on each of the days leading from Palm Sunday to Resurrection Sunday, because there are things that Jesus was trying to teach us in his last final hours on this earth that I know will help us in the times that we're facing right now. Let me just take a quick sip. Jesus told us that in the last days, we would see so much lawlessness. We would see the hardening of people's hearts. We would see brother turning against brother, children turning against their parents. We would see right being called wrong, wrong being called right. A lot of those things Steve and I were just talking about, and we're watching it. We're watching it unfold right before our eyes. We know we're in the last day. If you're a Christian worth your salt, you know we're in the last days. Jesus told us we wouldn't know the day or the time, but we would know the season. We're in it. When we just look at the news headlines that Steve just went over, we look at all of the war that's happening and all of the things that are playing out, even in our own country. We see the radical Islamists trying to take over. That is rooted in evil. Go back and read some history on that. It all branched from Isaac and Ishmael. All of everything that we're dealing with now is rooted in Old Testament rivalries. The Ishmael, which was the illegitimate son of Abraham, the one that Sarah insisted he have with her maid Hagar, they were banished, after some time. But that son, Ishmael, went on to form the Arab nations, and his rightful son, Isaac, that God had promised him with his wife, Sarah, he was the one that eventually ruled over Israel, that bloodline, Abraham, Isaac, and then his son, Jacob. So if we look at it, everything that we need to know about what's happening right now in our society is rooted in the Bible. All of it. All the answers are there. So all of this lawlessness and everything, when God told us that when we started to see this, the rumors of wars, the rumors of wars, all the earthquakes, all of the unsteadiness in the earth, when we started to see that, we should look up because our redemption draws near. And he told us to encourage each other with his words. And the things that he taught us in this Holy Week before he left the earth, that he taught his disciples, that they have entrusted to us and taught down through the ages to us. This is how we can have peace among all of this chaos. This is how we can get up every day and see what's going on. And even though we have heavy hearts, especially for the kids, oh my gosh, that's the hardest for me, is seeing what the kids are going through, seeing the high rates of abortion, seeing the children being trafficked. I mean, you could just look around and literally become hopeless very quickly if we didn't have that hope in Jesus. I hate to see anyone suffer, especially a child. But God said as the time of his return started drawing near, that we would see the increase in this evil too. So we need to always have that eternal perspective that this world is passing away. This world is sinking sand. This world is a vapor. This is not our home. Suffering here is not the worst thing that could happen to us. Eternal separation from God is the worst thing that could happen to us, which is why I always say in these last days, we need to be so busy trying to win as many people as we can to him, because we can just see it. We can see the handwriting on the wall. We can see everything coming down just as he prepared it, just as he told us it would be. So let's walk through what he was doing from Palm Sunday all the way to Easter Sunday. And I'm going to do my best to not miss anything. If I do, feel free to leave a comment and let me know if there's something I missed. But so Palm Sunday kicks off our Holy Week officially. It's the 7-day period from Palm Sunday to Easter Sunday. Jesus triumphantly, in other words, everyone knows he's coming. He's the king. They all recognize him as the Messiah. He rolls into Jerusalem with a lot of fanfare on a donkey in humility, just as was prophesied in the Old Testament. He enters Jerusalem and people are excited. They're cheering him on. They're screaming out, Hosanna in the highest. They're laying down palm branches. Palm branches were very, very significant in ancient times. They signified royalty. They were laying these palm branches down and laying their cloaks down so that the donkey would walk across them and not on the dirt, right? It just showed such reverence for Jesus coming into Jerusalem. People think that he's coming in to save them from the oppressive Roman Empire, right? They don't know what it's going to mean, but they just know he's king, that he's Messiah, and that he's their savior. And that's what they're praising him for. Hosanna in the highest. All right, so he gets into town. Now, right away, between there, Monday and Tuesday, he's visiting with people, and he's also making some pretty big waves in the temple. So one of the first things that he does on Monday, as he starts to notice things going on in the sacred temple area that are not supposed to be going on there, the corruption, the money corruption that's happening there, he just goes off out of anger. He comes in there and he turns tables over. He gets out his whip and he is calling them literally a brood of vipers. And he's bringing correction, instant correction into that temple area and letting them know everything they're doing there is not only is it not okay, it's disgusting to him. It's disgusting to God. So that makes quite a scene, right? He's got quite a lot of attention drawn to him now. He's also teaching in that temple on Monday and Tuesday. He's in there teaching with authority, calling himself the Son of God. Pharisees are standing around and they're very threatened by this because they want to be the top dogs, right? They want to be the ones that are the experts in the Word of God. And now you've got this. They didn't see him as the Messiah. Many of the Pharisees did not. They just see him as this zealot who's come in now and he's claiming to be God. And they're so blind. Their hearts are so hard and they're so blind they can't see right in front of them. He's performing miracles. He's doing all that, and they just can't see that he is the Son of God. So they start plotting to kill him. Tuesday, I mean, they're trying to find a way, but it's hard for them to get a window to do it because he's surrounded by so many people who are very drawn to him. It's hard to get him alone, and it's hard to get him into a position where they can kill him. So they start plotting and planning. So round about Tuesday, Wednesday, this is when he's visiting with some friends. He's teaching again. He's leaving very important messages with the disciples. He's telling them that his time is short. They don't really understand what's coming, but he's reinforcing to them that his time is almost up. This is the point too where Mary comes and washes his feet with the alabaster, expensive oil from her alabaster box, and washes his feet with her hair and with this precious oil. I mean, this is when all of this is going on. It's also around this time, Tuesday, Wednesday, when the Pharisees start to plot and plan with Judas, that betrayal that's going to happen where Judas is going to turn Jesus over to them. Judas was the one who was in charge of the money as one of the 12 disciples. He was the one that kept up with the donations they got and the money that they got. And so he could be bought, and they paid him to basically turn Jesus over. So they start plotting and planning all of this. Okay, so this is Tuesday, Wednesday, all this is going down. All right, now Thursday, some very significant things happen. Thursday is the day that the Last Supper takes place, when Jesus starts to speak in symbolism again, and he teaches the disciples when he breaks the bread. He said, "This is my body broken for you." And then when he takes the cup of wine and he says, "This is my blood that will be poured out for you," he's starting to kind of hint about what's coming. He already knows full well, but something that I found out recently that I thought was really interesting is he spoke a lot in symbols or in parables because he didn't want to tip the enemy off on what the salvation plan was, so that Satan then would not disrupt it. So even Satan didn't know how this redemption was going to happen. So Jesus didn't give them the full story. He would give them hints toward it. He would give them, like I said, parables and symbols toward it, but he wouldn't really spell it all out for them until afterward, because the enemy would have stopped the crucifixion. He would have stopped that if he would have known. All right, so this Last Supper is starting to come to a close. He spent quite a bit of time. This went on like all afternoon and into the evening, right? And then he goes out into the Garden of Gethsemane. And at this point, he's going out there to pray because he knows what's coming the next day. If you remember at the Last Supper, he told Judas, "Go do what you have to do." He told the disciples during the Last Supper that one of them was going to betray him. So he already knew all of this was happening. He told Judas, "Go on, go do what you got to do." So as Judas goes from the table, he goes out to the Garden of Gethsemane to pray with his remaining disciples. He takes some of them with him and he says, please stay awake and keep guard. Of course, they fall asleep. But Jesus is out there pleading and begging with God. If there's any other way, Lord, if there's any other way to redeem mankind, basically is what he was saying. Is there any other way? Take this cup from me. And God basically said, this is the only way. You know, in the spiritual world, blood is the currency. You know, in our world, money is the currency, but in the spiritual world, it was blood. The only thing that could atone for a sin, in other words, to wash away a sin, was pure blood. In blood is so much life, right? So you look at a baby lamb that's pure, that's blemishless. You know, this is what they would sacrifice to try to take that innocent blood to cover the sin of the Jewish people. When Jesus came, he was that perfect lamb. He lived a sinless life. His blood had all the life in it and pure and without any blemish, without any sin. So his blood had to be shed in that spiritual currency in order for the sin to be forgiven. And he's taken on the sin of all of mankind. So he's literally sweating blood. His body was taking in the enormous pain that he knew he was facing. And the Bible says that he literally sweat blood, but he was willing to do it. He surrendered and he said, yes, I will do it. So Jesus chose this for us. He chose to do this for us. It's amazing. Okay, so he's out here praying in the Garden of Gethsemane, and here comes Judas with the soldiers to arrest Jesus. And if you remember, I think it was Peter who was trying to defend Jesus and cut off the ear of one of the soldiers, one of the guards, and Jesus reached up and healed his ear back. Jesus went willingly. He knew what he had to do. And so he just surrendered and he went with them. He was tried that night. And then, of course, we know the next day, they kind of had this back and forth between Pontius Pilate and Herod. And they were like, you take care of him, or you take care of him. It was just, nobody wanted the blood on their hands. But eventually Pontius Pilate basically said to the crowd, they held him up against a known murderer. And Pontius Pilate is saying, who do you want me to release? I'll release one to you. Do you want it to be Barabbas, the known killer, or do you want it to be Jesus? And we know the answer to that. They chose to crucify Jesus and they released Barabbas. So now we come to Friday, where the horrific beatings begin. Jesus is flogged. He's beaten within an inch of his life. I want to say 40 lashes each time would have equaled death. So he was beat right up to that last lash. And the Roman whips were incredibly brutal. They had little balls on the end of them that would just rip skin as they would release from the body. Jesus was all but naked and beaten all over his entire body and weakened significantly. Just breaks my heart to think about it. He would choose that for us. And then after all of that, they put a crown of thorns on his head. He says, oh, you're the king? You're the king? So they mocked him and put a crown of thorns. And I'm talking about these thorns were like this. They went into his head, into his skull. If all of that's not painful enough, now he's got to carry his own cross all through the streets of Jerusalem up to Golgotha, where he's then nailed up on that cross on Friday. And they nail into the wrists, not into the hands. They nail into the wrists so that the hands don't slide, so he can't fall off the cross. So he's nailed into his heel area and into his wrists. And it's the asphyxiation ultimately that kills someone on a cross, because they're constantly trying to pull themselves up to breathe and they lose their strength and they can't. And it's just, I don't even want to get into all the details of it, but this is Friday. I want to say around 3:00 in the afternoon is when he gave up his spirit. And again, this is a choice. You know, he committed his spirit on behalf of all of us and even said, forgive them, Father. They know not what they do. He's forgiving the very people that nailed him to this cross. He's being mocked. He's being just made fun of. If you're Jesus, come down off of that cross. A big storm comes in, like this, the heavens, just lightning and thunder. And also during this time, as soon as Jesus gives his spirit up in the temple, there was a big veil. And when he committed his spirit, that veil ripped from the top to the bottom, just to signify that that was God that did it. So it wasn't like somebody came into the temple and pulled it across at the bottom and ripped it like they normally would from up. No, it was ripped from the top down, and that was one tall veil. So only God could do that. There was an earthquake. I mean, it was a very, very powerful display of God's anger. And when that veil was ripped, what that signified is that the veil between us and God is no more. And before Jesus died, only a priest could go into the holies of holy. And he had to have a rope tied around his waist to go in there and ask forgiveness of our sins and go in and commune with God. And if he did anything out of the ordinary, if he was not clean enough, if he was not purified and cleansed enough when he went into that holy of holies, then he would literally die. And that's why they had the rope, because they would have to pull him out, because nobody could go into the presence of God where the Ark of the Covenant was. In the presence of God, nobody could go in there without a very ritualistic cleansing. And so when God tore that veil, it was signifying that you don't need a priest anymore to go in and speak on your behalf. We now have direct access to God in Jesus. That's the significance of that. When I have a lot of my Catholic friends that want to debate with me, the Protestant versus the Catholic faith, this is one of the things that I'll always come to, is I'll say, if we still had to go through priests to talk to God, to atone for our sins, then what was the point of the veil tearing? And that's something they usually can't answer. Okay, so that's proof right there that Jesus paid our sin debt in full, once and for all, giving us that bridge now to access God directly. So Friday afternoon, he's let down off of the cross, and Mary and some of the ladies, they wrap him and prepare him for burial. He is put in a borrowed tomb. It's sealed. And Friday night, all day Saturday night, he's in that tomb. Sunday, they go down to check on him. The women go down to check on him, I might add. Keep in mind, the disciples are hiding. Everyone's hiding because they know that if they've been associated with Jesus at all, that they could lose their lives too. Everyone was on kind of a hunt for Jesus's disciples. And so they were hiding out in this room. But the women went down to check on Jesus. And when they get there, the stone is rolled away. And there's an angel that appears and say, why do you come looking for the dead among the living? Right. And they're startled when Jesus appears to them. And he says, I'm alive. And he shows them, look, my hand, he shows them his wrists and he shows them he's very much alive. And he tells them, go tell everybody else, go tell the disciples. So the women are trusted and charged with going and letting everyone know that Jesus is alive. And of course, they don't believe them. And they're in this room, this upper room, and Jesus appears. And he said, yeah, it's true. I really am alive. So Sunday, and then for 40 days after that, he stays with them and he teaches them and he loves on them and he teaches them about the whole point of that resurrection. And that during that time on Saturday, when he was still in the tomb, he had descended down into Hades, into hell, and defeated hell and took the keys of hell. So he overcame death, he overcame the enemy, and he comes back now on Sunday to let everyone know. So it's a very, very, very victorious, triumphant story. All these tremendous things happen. And then at the end of that 40 days, he's standing on the Mount of Olives and he ascends to heaven and he explains to them that not only am I going to prepare a place for you, but I will come back and get you. And he explains that they will then, when he comes back for the rapture, they will have resurrection bodies. that we will all go with Jesus to the place that he prepared for us. We'll go there for the wedding feast for that 7-year period while the tribulation is happening here on the earth, while literally God's wrath is being rained down on this earth. We will be with the Lamb. We will be with our groom. We, the church, are known as the bride, and Jesus is coming back for us to get us. I want to share with you this neat thing about the Jewish weddings, because this is what I mean by this symbolism is so important for us right now in these last days that we're in. Whenever a Jewish wedding was going to happen, the father of the groom, once that bride had been chosen and they were betrothed and all of that, the groom would go back home to the father's house and they would add on a room to make a place for the bride and the groom to live in the father's house. And only the father could tell the groom when it was time, when he felt like it was time, when everything was done and prepared well enough, he would then say, okay, it's all done. Go get your bride. So even the groom didn't know when the father was going to choose that, when the father felt like it was time. So he's waiting for the green light from dad to go get his bride. It's exactly the same with Jesus. He ascended to heaven. He said, I go to prepare a place for you. Even Jesus doesn't know when he's coming back in the rapture. He's waiting on God to say, go get your bride. Okay, so that's what's happening right now in heaven. Jesus has gone to prepare a place for us in his Father's house. And when Father God says, go get your bride, then he will come. All right, then the way that the grooms would come then is they would not send word ahead of time to their bride. They were just expected. The brides were just expected to be ready at any time. To be ready, they would have oil that they would use in their lamps to burn all evening long in case the groom came in the middle of the night, which was pretty often the case. He would get there around midnight, wee hours of the morning. And so she was to be fully prepared, packed, ready, and she was to have her oil lamp burning, showing him that she's ready at all times. And so this is kind of, again, the same with us. Like, we are supposed to be ready. We are preparing ourselves to go back with our groom at any point. So we're to keep our oil lamps burning. How do we do that? We stay in our Bibles. We stay in praise music. We stay listening to shows like this where we can encourage each other and we can continue to learn together and grow together. When Jesus comes back for us in the rapture, we don't know, again, the day or the hour. We don't know when he's coming. So we're to be ready to go with him at any point. When she goes and becomes his bride, she is changed into white linen. Her clothing is all transformed into white linen. And it's this feast that takes place over 7 days. I mean, I'm talking a big old party, right? Just a feast of this wedding. Well, that's what's going to happen with us. When Jesus comes and gets us, we are going to be transformed. Our bodies are going to be resurrected. We're going to go into our resurrection bodies, which are going to be perfect. We're going to get serious. Like, no more wrinkles, no more fat deposits, right? We're going into perfect bodies. And then we're going to be wearing all linen when we're married to him. That's the purification of that marriage. And then we're going to enjoy a feast that in biblical times, and kind of comparing it to end times, that 7 days, the 7 years of the tribulation. While all of that's going on, we're going to be enjoying this feast with God, with Jesus, our bridegroom, married to him. And then at the end of the 7-year tribulation, then we return with him. The Bible says that he comes on horse, and all of us saints in white linen come with him on our horses. We come back to earth. Jesus finishes off this earth and he builds a new earth. He renews it, a whole new earth where he's going to then reign here for 1,000 years, and we're going to reign with him for that 1,000 years. The devil will be bound for that 1,000 years. He will not be able to wreak any havoc. At the end of that, he will be loosed for just a short time, but then he and all of his minions will finally be thrown into the abyss forever, and they will be no more. So this period right now, we're in the waiting, right? We are to be ready. We don't want to sit in the And like I always say, we don't want to sit in the dugout biting our nails. No, we're supposed to be ready. We're supposed to be on the field trying to attract as many people as we can to him. And then when he comes, we're ready to go. And hopefully we're going to take as many people with us as we can. So this is where we're at right now. So all of this that happened during Holy Week, all of the symbolism is still so relevant today. And I just think it's so cool. I just can't, I've been thinking so much about heaven lately, about our home. There's a song out right now called I'm Homesick for Heaven. And I get that so much. This world, as this evil just increases and increases in the world, we are to be the light. We turn up our light. We turn up our Jesus, right? More and more to try to drive that evil back. But once we're taken in the rapture, because we have the Holy Spirit in us and he is known as the restrainer, once we go, then there will be nothing holding back that evil here on the earth. It will be hell on earth, literally. Definitely a precursor, a serious precursor to hell. And we don't want anybody that we know or love to be here for that. So it should just encourage us, motivate us to try to reach as many people as possible so that no one's here to endure that we can possibly help. But boy, it's so exciting to think about heaven, isn't it? I'm ready. You ready? Come, Jesus, come. We're ready. All right, ladies, I hope this has been a blessing for you today. I hope maybe you learned something new. I hope as we absorb and really take in the gravity of this Holy Week, that maybe it'll hold some new wonder for us than it did before we showed up for the podcast today. You know, what Jesus did for us on the cross, it's hard to even wrap our heads around that kind of love. Thank God he did it. He didn't have to. He came for us on a rescue mission. Man, I'm grateful every day. I know you are too for that. Here in these last days, we want to try to win as many people as we possibly can to him. We know the time is short. So I hope that as you walk through the rest of this week, that you'll walk with more authority, with more conviction, and certainly with more of a radar for who's out there in your sphere of influence that needs to hear the good news of the gospel. All right, ladies, I will see you back here next week. Lady up.
Taking back this house, taking back this town. Mama, don't back down. Just a lady up, lady up, lady up.